The Bame Vision logo, 4 solid circles from left to right in colours of brown, tan, coffee and beige, with the words Bame written in white within them, with the word Vision written in tan underneath, and below the words Supporting Ethnically Diverse Communities with Their Eye Health and Sight Loss in brown.
Bame Vision presents celebrating blind and partially sighted fathers with Dr. Sylvanus Effiom. Can you tell us what your role is and describe what you do?
My name is Dr. Sylvanus Effiom, and I currently work with Moorfields Eye Hospital. My role initially was that of a legal services / equality officer, but now I'm basically focused on building equality within the trust, coordinate the staff networks, generally deal with equality issues within the organization, both from the legal and the policy perspectives. I've organized events and, carry out projects that impact on equality and inclusion within the trust. When I joined Moorfields Eye Hospital, I basically was the main person behind the creation of the staff networks because I discovered that there was a gap in that area, and bringing my experience from the other areas that I'd worked before, I decided to create the 3 existing operational staff networks of Moorfields, which are the staff network for the blind and ethnic minorities. You have a staff network for the LGBT community and a staff network for the disability group community. So from the strategic perspective, I'm also involved in pushing through the trust corporate equality and diversity strategy. It involves different dimensions, i.e. Conducting health equality impact assessments, reviewing policies to ensure that they are compliant. You also get involved with things like, career progression management. So basically it entails a whole range of things. But as I said, if you just look at it within the context of the legal and policy dimensions of equality and inclusion, then I think it will give you a good idea of what the job entails.
How did you get into your job?
Well, I joined Moorfields in 2016 after having spent over 15 years working as a legal consultant in 2 law firms in London. By 2016, it had become obvious to me that my sight was going to be a serious issue in my life. So I decided to look at other avenues where I could harness my skills and experience and have an impactful contribution to an organization or to issues around disabilities generally. So I applied to Moorfields Eye Hospital. Initially, I joined there as under an apprenticeship scheme. So it was basically a part-time role while I continued to work with job solicitors. In 2017, when the legal department was created, I was asked to join the legal department as a full-time worker. And that's how I eventually, joined the organization in 2017 as a legal services and equality officer. And from there, it's been all positive. I've been very lucky, if you consider it in terms, in the context of my sight situation. But basically what it is I'll just give you a resume. In 1997, I joined Chamberlain Solicitors, and I had a very progressive career with Chamberlain Solicitors. In 2001 or 2002, I went back I decided to go back to the law school to, get qualified as a solicitor. And it was there that I discovered that I couldn't, my site couldn't permit me to read printed materials. Even though I continue to work with Chamberlain solicitors. So I backed out of the program and focused on building my work capacity within the law firm. That experience in 2002 made me to think deeply about the ramifications of my side laws. So I used that period also to get, because the next year, 2003, I was finally, declared visually impaired by the doctors. And so I had to go through a period of rehabilitation. In 2007, having been exposed, as I said, to the realities of side loss and the possible structures of support that are available, I decided to go back to school to read for my PhD, for my doctorate. And I decided at that point to start, to focus on issues around equality and discrimination and law. So I went to the law school at Middlesex University, where I read for my PhD. The support mechanisms or structures that really helped me through. The first thing I'll say is that I made a determined effort to get out there and understand what structures were available. And that is the starting point there was my relationship with the Organization of Blind African Caribbeans, where I became directly exposed, contact with individuals with sight loss, and I literally witnessed how they were, working with the computer. And in those days, computer was just emerging as a unit of work unit. So that stage, I thought, okay, I have to get some training myself. So I started doing a bit of training with them and making my own contributions. It is in that context that I eventually became the secretary to the management committee of the organization for about 5 years. During that period, while I was a secretary, I used my legal background to open the OBAC Immigration Advice Center, which enabled us to provide legal advice to Black and ethnic minority members who were with side laws, who were encountering immigration issues. So that was a very successful venture in itself. Apart from the other work which I did in my capacity as a secretary to the organization. Moving forward, as I said, 2007, I went back to the law school to the PhD. And after my studies, I now started looking at options. But the one thing, again, that I realized was that with side laws, there are two major issues for a professional. If you're not, you either make a determined effort to adjust to the side laws by getting retraining, or you decide to go on some sort of involuntary retirement. I did not see myself as, having reached that point of retiring. So I started looking around London to find where I could get some form of IT training, formal training. And somehow I stumbled on the North London College, where I did a 1-year course on IT there. And that was in 2015. And it was after that course that I thought I had the capacity now to go into any formal employment in terms of the skills, the IT skills. And yeah, 2016, I moved into more fields. And since then, I've not only become an expert in JAWS and the JAWS software, but I think I'm very comfortable working in any structured employment, whether in the public or private sector.
Do you get support with your work?
When I joined Moorfields, I worked closely with the director of human resources then, and one of the things that changed the dynamics was that early on in that 2016, I came across the leadership course that was being offered by the Disability Rights UK in conjunction with the Institute of Leadership Management. That was a course that was focused primarily on persons with disabilities in employment. And I decided that I was going to get that course because I thought my leadership, I needed to, contextualize my disability or my leadership skills within the context of my disability. And that exactly was what the course was offering. So I spoke to the director and she said, okay, that is good and rest. But well, they couldn't really, the organization was in a position to, foot the bill. So I said, that is not a problem. What we could do is we'll do a 50-50% share, and I'll come up with the other part of the money, which I did. And I attended the course. So the moment I graduated from the course, I came back to the organization, and that was when I started the Disability Staff Network. So the learning I gained from that course, the exposure, the experience, made me to look at organizational issues differently. And when I came back to Moorfields, I decided to start that the network project. And the first network I created was the Disability Staff Network, which is called Bame. And that was the very first time Moorfields as an organization was getting exposed to this concept of staff empowerment through staff networks. So it was a very, very positive foundation we laid there. And since then, we've been able to extend it to the different protected characteristics. So in that, just at that level, you could see the degree of support. But or in terms of equipment and all those other things to enable me to do my work, I think because I had a very strong legal background, I understood exactly what were my rights in that context. And I was able to get the organization to provide to me the support which I needed. So I did not need to wait for them to get in touch with Access to Work for me. I did that on my own because of the level of experience I had. So all I got them, I liaised with them, with the organization, but my support came through. Within the organization itself, the issue of equality, especially for disabled people, was just coming to the limelight, as I said. So there wasn't much in terms of organizational or structural support within the organization. But over the years, things improved as we, myself and my colleagues have been working to influence things. So we have a lot of changes that have taken place that provide support not only to me, because as I said, as an individual, with my level of experience and exposure, I can get things done within the context of my rights. But that is not what is important. It's how the organization is able to put in place structures that mainstream disability, if that would be done appropriate, will give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So that it's not a question of individual adjustments, but adjustments that impact on anyone in the organization or who intends to join the organization with a disability. And if I could make an assessment of where we stand today as an organization, I would say we've attained almost 90%. The level of awareness and preparedness to support persons with disabilities getting entering and staying in employment with muffins. Okay, access to work is a very important element in terms of getting persons with disabilities to enter and stay in employment. Access to a personal experience has been a very valuable support mechanism, which has enabled me, as a visually impaired person, to have a support worker, which is very crucial if I have to perform my contractual duties within my organization. It has also enabled me to purchase certain equipment. So, like my JAWS software, it came on from the access to web. So there are other things that, as I said, organizations now are getting aware of, more aware of these structures of support existing outside the organization, and they are making positive, efforts to help the disabled person to get the support in place. So persons with disabilities, when if they decide to go into employment, they shouldn't be shy to request from the HR department whatever help they need to contact and deal with access to work. They need to just be aware that the support is there and get the right person within the organization to give them the assistance to help to access the support.
Which assistive technology, gadgets, and visual aids do you use?
When I started using assistive technology, I was introduced to JAWS. There's an organization called Sight and Sound, which I was introduced to them. Again, I'm not a very flexible person in terms of trying new technologies. So, as I said, since I was introduced to JAWS, what I've done is I've stuck to it as the main assistive technology. As I said, JAWS is a screen reader, and there are other screen reading softwares out there. The support from access to work is a continuing support. So after a period of time, maybe 5-6 years, if you want some sort of an assessment, workplace assessment, you can request for it. You don't need your organization to do that. If you, the disabled person, feel that you need new equipment and the result, the current support is not adequate, then you can contact the Access to Work and they will arrange in conjunction with your manager to get a new assessment and take into account what your current needs are. So that ongoing support that makes the whole concept of disability equality a meaningful, and impactful thing in the lives of persons with disabilities. Equality for persons with disabilities. We normally say it shouldn't be, some favor which has to be booked in advance, but the reality is because the support has to be tailored to the specific needs, right? It is very important that you notify the suppliers or the ATW, and that assessment is conducted. If we are talking of mainstreaming, understand, disability within the workplace or wherever, we need to acknowledge that to a certain extent, it will have that support structure has to be individualized to suit the particular circumstances of the person with disability. And if you look at the Equality Act and how it is structured, you see, you have the Section 20 requirement for reasonable adjustment. Failure to make reasonable adjustment in itself is discrimination. So an organization that fails to make reasonable adjustment, we're not talking about whether the adjustment was suitable or not, just the fact that the organization or they failed to make reasonable adjustment amounts to discrimination. So that is, and the way the adjustment is, requirement of the adjustment is structured in terms of the interested disabled person, which implies that it is highly individualized, right? Now, if you look at the provisions of Section 149, that is the public sector equality duty, which makes provision for what they call positive action, and you see the dynamics, how the two provisions operate, that is the reasonable adjustment provisions of the Act and that of the positive action requirements. It provides, a complete field. So while the reasonable adjustment is highly individualized, the Act also recognizes that there will be other issues or areas of adjustment which the organization can make that is not directed at a specific disabled person. And that is where the concept of positive action comes in. So you have areas like training and the rest that can follow under that provision. So people should also make an effort to understand, what rights are there in terms of what the law. We need to make an effort to raise awareness, not only on the part of the employers of what their responsibilities are, but also empower the disabled people by making them aware of their rights, and because empowering them, awareness is one way of making them even cope with the stress of their disabilities. When you are aware of your environment, what is available to you and the rest, it could be very empowering. But when you are totally cut off and you lack that level of awareness, in itself it will be debilitating in terms of your psychological strength. I do deliver a lot of talks to different organizations if and when I'm required.
Balancing fatherhood and work life.
If I say I was able to balance it, it may be an overstatement because it was all through very challenging. But yeah, how it has turned out, I can't really say I had a structured or a secret way of going about it. But I think it's just based on principle, right? Acknowledging that your circumstances they cannot be the sacrificial lamb in terms of your circumstances. They're entitled to what is theirs. They're entitled to the parental, care and concern. So what I did was in terms of doing the normal school runs and the rest, I was able to do it partly also again because of the type of support. So I earlier this black cap scheme, black cap. Somebody introduced me to it, and he was able to leverage my position. I got one of those black cap thing, which enabled me in the event that, for instance, I am at work and there's a call from my children's school. I will take a cap immediately and be there. When it comes to helping them with their studies and the rest, again, I did not want to think that my disability could be an issue. The difference is I may not be able to read what they would, read their work, but I can get them to read it to me and I will understand it. My son, if we're playing football, he knows exactly that Daddy doesn't see, and therefore he will always direct me, Daddy, the football is on your left, so yeah, the ball is on your right. And I was able to develop that understanding with him, and I only hope he did enjoy my company then. My wife was, a very important component in that. She was a wonderful support. So she, having a wife and a partner who understands, the challenges of your disabilities, is a blessing, so to say.
One item you couldn't do without.
One item, I'll say, is my laptop.
The biggest barrier for blind or partially sighted people building a career.
Awareness. Awareness is the most powerful tool that can change the dial. When you are aware of not only yourself, but the institutions around you and your wider environment, there's nothing that you cannot do. We who are, activists in this field, we shouldn't take it for granted that what we know, everyone knows, understand? And that if people are not changing their circumstances, is maybe because of their individual, incapacity or not. No, it is because they're not really aware. And we should try as much as possible. We should share our knowledge and experience in this field.
Advice for vision impaired parents looking to work.
To understand that work is not only to earn a salary, but it has a therapeutic impact on your psychological and emotional well-being. And most importantly, it is empowering. If you have that at the back of your mind, you can appreciate how it could be a very powerful driver in terms of the energy you put to get into work. The other thing is, don't be too selective of the type of work you want to do. Go out there, there are many organizations that can support you in terms of making the applications. So the job center is there. The RNIB, I'm not sure that they still run. They used to have a job club. I think Clinton has something of that nature. There's an employment component of Clinton. But look for organizations that can help you to, complete or use whatever available support is there. But get into a job. And when you are in there, understand that the job is not the end in itself. A job is a platform. It's a platform for social networking. It's a platform, as I said, for self-empowerment. It is a platform for raising awareness. These intangible benefits are the things that have more impact on your ability to, cope with your disability more than, the financial reward. I'm not saying that the financial reward is not important, but also let it not, blind you to these other intangibles, which are, to me, in a way, more important. So, but the option of not getting into work is not something we should be considered. And work here may not necessarily, as I said, be paid employment. You could do, as I said, I did a lot of work with the voluntary sector, which meant that I spent hours there which I was not earning any revenue. People need money, that is true, but when you do work that impacts on others, the level of satisfaction there is you cannot quantify it in monetary terms. Make every effort to get yourself into work, and then keep an eye on those intangible benefits and work on it to leverage yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Effiom, for joining us for part 2 of our Celebrating Blind and Partially Sighted Fathers series. Your story, advice, information, and knowledge has been incredibly valuable and insightful. To read part 1 of Dr. Effiom's blog, please head over to our website, www.bamevision.org. Stay tuned as we have more coming up in this series. To stay up to date with all of our activities, please follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.